Good morning, everyone. Thank you for, good evening. Good evening. Thank you for coming to our October board meeting. We will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You'll notice one empty seat will be filled in about a half an hour, but Ms. Chang is representing the Board of Education at the New York State School Boards Association business meeting, and that's why she is not here at present. Before we begin, I would like to introduce Legislator Joshua Lafazan, who is here to say a few words to the board.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. A number of familiar faces, but for those of you who are meeting for the first time, my name is Josh Lafazan. I have the distinct privilege of serving as Nassau County Legislator representing District 18, and I'm here because it is School Board Recognition Week. I learned about this week sitting on this dais when I was a member of this school board, and the late Judy Jacobs, who I idolized as we all did, gave me a proclamation for serving on a school board. And it got me thinking about the importance of this week, and it's actually my honor to recognize all of you. And 51 million is the number I thought about driving over here. 51 million is the number of public school students who attend schools in the United States. And if you think about 51 million kids with their own unique stories and experiences and daily trials and tribulations, and of that 51 million, the 6,000 plus who go to Syosset schools are the luckiest kids in the country. And it's really in part because of all of you and your service and your dedication and your commitment to making sure that our kids want for nothing, to making sure that during a once-in-a-generation pandemic, our kids had everything they needed to be safe and to learn and to thrive. This is an excellent school board. I serve with many of you, and I'm grateful to call you my colleagues and my friends. So on behalf of Nassau County's 1.3 million residents, I do hereby recognize and honor this Board of Education for School Board Recognition Week. Continue to do what you do for our kids. We're so lucky to have you in our corner. So I'll announce you one by one. We have President Tracy Frankel, Vice President Thomas Rotolo, Trustee Shani Park, hey, how are you? Nice to see you up here. Trustee Anna Levitan, Trustee Brian Greco, hey. Trustee Susan Falkov, Trustee Lisa Koshia, Trustee Carol Chang, and he's gotten so many from me that I have to give yours in a wooden plaque. So Trustee Rob Gershon, yours is coming. I thank you for your years of service. Thank you. Do you want to do a picture up there?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you so much. We have also been honored to receive from Tom Swazi a certificate of special congressional recognition presented to the Syosset Board of Education on the occasion of School Board Recognition Week. It says, on behalf of the constituents of the 3rd Congressional District of New York, thank you to the Syosset Board of Education for your devotion to our students. The value and importance of learning impacts and strengthens our community. Best wishes for continued success and improving education for our future generations. So thank you to Tom Swazi, and we will be proud to put this in our boardroom. This is what it looks like, everybody. Okay, just a reminder to everyone that universal masking is required for all individuals inside preschool through 12th grade schools. So regardless of vaccination status, by entering our board meeting, you will agree to wear a mask at all times. So thank you so much for your compliance. Approval of the minutes of meeting September 13th, 2021. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Greco, seconded by Mr. Rotolo. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, Dr. Rufo, the treasurer's report, please.
As indicated in the treasurer's report, the cash on hand for the month end August 31st, 2021 was $83,401,679.60. It shows that bank balances for all cash accounts were reconciled to the book balances and were collateralized in accordance with the district's banking agreements and investment policy.
Thank you. I believe there's another voice that would like to add to the recognition of the board in this School Board Recognition Week, and that is the president of our Syosset Council of PTAs, Ms. Deirdre Dappas.
Every year, the New York State Board Association sponsors School Board Recognition Week. The week honors board members' commitment to public education. As the association states, school board members take on one of the most important citizen responsibilities, overseeing the education of the community's youth. What may be often forgotten is that the school board members are volunteers. The gift of your time, expertise, and commitment is critical to the success of our district. You balance your role as school board members with work, family, and other volunteering positions. All of us in the PTA understand the challenges and the opportunities that volunteerism can bring. We know you share our belief that working to promote the welfare of every child makes it all worth it. We are happy to recognize your efforts on this special week, but please know we appreciate your work all year long. On behalf of all the PTAs in Syosset, we present a small token of our appreciation, along with a certificate from the New York State Board Association signed by Dr. Rogers. The theme of School Board Recognition Week is School Boards Lead so students can achieve. We thank you for your leadership and tireless support of our students and our community. Thank you.
Deirdre, please extend our thanks to the PTA for always supporting the board, for being such great partners with us, and for continuing this really open relationship that we all have. And thank you so much for thinking of us with these gifts as well. We really appreciate it.
School districts are required annually to prepare audited financial statements. The school district uses the firm of Cullen and Danowski to prepare our financial statements. Annually, the firm reports to the board on the findings of those statements, and from the firm, we have Bill Oderson.
Good evening. As we said, I'm Bill Oderson. I'm the Director of Audit Services at Cullen and Danowski. We are the district's external auditor. Our job as the external auditor is to express an opinion on the district's financial statements. We conduct our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards as set forth by the AICPA and government auditing standards as set forth by the Comptroller General of the United States. Those standards require that we plan and perform the audit to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements are free of material misstatement. At the conclusion of our audit, we issued our opinion on the financial statements, and that opinion was an unqualified opinion, which is the highest level of opinion for all funds with the exception of the Extra Classroom Activity Fund, where we issued a qualified opinion which relates to the accounting of the accounting records of cash receipts at the individual club levels. We also issued a report on internal controls, noting no material weaknesses in internal controls of the district. And we issued a report on compliance with laws and regulations, noting no instances of non-compliance. We also issued an individual financial statement of the extra classroom activity fund, which included an unqualified opinion, again relating to the cash receipts. And we issued a management letter. This year, the management letter only included updates of previous year's comments. There were no additional comments as a result of the current year's work. Is any questions from anyone?
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oderson. Our district business official is Dr. Patricia Rufo. Every year, this time of year, as school tax bills arrive, we have gotten into the habit of trying to do some explanatory work. Sometimes people will call the office and we'll help explain their bills to them directly, but we've found that it is useful to go through the process of explaining what is within the district's control and what happens at the county level. It's particularly challenging this year because the county is doing so much with local property taxes that is new. Primarily, the county is in the process now of doing a county-wide reevaluation and reassessment of properties. What that means is the properties that they determine were undervalued are going up in value and therefore going up in taxes, and the properties that they determined were overvalued are going down and therefore paying less in taxes. So that, of course, obscures what the school district does, and it certainly moves around a lot more. It is much more volatile than what the school district has done from a budgeting and tax perspective. So to try to help make sense of this, our presentation this year is a little more complicated than it has been in the past because the county is doing so much more than it has done in the past. But I think Dr. Rufo will help us make sense of that. So please.
Okay, thank you. So as Dr. Rogers said, tonight we'd like to try to bring some clarity to the roles that the school district and Nassau County plays in this process. And we want to explain some of the factors that impact taxes, as well as show how the assessment system is playing out by using some examples of actual properties in the district. So starting out with explaining those factors that impact taxes, we come to this slide, and at the top you can see the box that shows the things that are controlled by the school district. I want to emphasize that the one and the only factor that is controlled by the school district is the tax levy. The green box that's below are the items that are controlled by Nassau County, including the assessments, the reassessments, changes in base proportions, the tax rate, and assessment challenges. And I'll go through those later in the presentation. So let's start with what the district controls, and that's the school district tax levy, which is the total amount of money that the district needs to fund its operations for the school year. And that's after all other revenue sources have been applied and deducted. So the district starts out with the budget, and then we take out other funding sources such as state aid, grants, or other revenue sources such as pilots and things like reserves. All of those come out, and then what's remaining is the tax levy. And the levy is presented to the county in August, and it represents the same levy that we talk about during the budget, and then we present that levy to the county in August. So I think it will be useful to just take a look at the history of the levy over the last 10 years or so since the inception of the tax cap. And both of the charts, both on the top left and the bottom right, show the same trend. The first column up on the left, top left, shows the tax cap calculation, and that is the maximum allowable tax cap that the district, or tax levy, that amount. And you can see by comparing it to the column on the right, which is the actual tax levy, that each year since 2013, the district has been under the tax cap. And that's the same trend that's shown in the bar chart to the right. And in fact, over the 10 years since the tax cap has been implemented, the district has been under the cap to the tune of $10.2 million. This chart, again, shows the similar trend of the school district being under the allowable tax cap. The blue line is the allowable tax cap, and the red line is the actual tax cap that we levied, and the green line is the Consumer Price Index, the CPI. And you can see over the course of time, and particularly over the last 6 years, the district has been right at the CPI. Now, if I were doing this presentation exclusively on the district's role in this process, this would be the end and I would stop. However, as a result of the changes that are going on in Nassau County with the reassessments, Dr. Rogers asked me to spend a little bit of time explaining the role of the county's assessment system and the impact on the taxes specifically this year. So once the tax levy is set, the method for distributing the taxes is a function of the county. And those factors that are in the right, in that green box, are the mechanism by which this allocation happens. So let's start with the first one, which is the determination of assessments. Now this definition, this is the Nassau County Department of Assessment website, and this definition comes right from their website. And the assessed value determines the share of taxes homeowners will pay. If we think of the tax levy as a pie, the value of the assessment determines how big or small each homeowner's piece of that tax levy pie will be. We also know that property improvements impact value and challenges to the assessment also impact value. Again, all of these factors are controlled by the county. Additionally, what's important to remember in the equation is that the change in an individual homeowner's value will be impacted relative to how the entire district overall assessed values are moving. And I have some examples that will describe that relationship a little bit better. Now, a complicating factor in trying to explain to residents what's happening to school taxes is the phase-in of the county-wide reassessment that was first implemented for school districts in the 2021 school year, last year. So Nassau County's reassessment plan changed several factors in how homeowners' taxes are calculated, including the value of homes and the level of assessment from 0.25% to 0.1. The county provided information to homeowners on their new system and including the phase-in over 5 years of the higher assessed values, or lower in some cases. Values, prior to the reassessment, values had been frozen for over 10 years, and the reassessment was done with the goal of producing assessments that were based on market values. And so it's also important to remember, while Nassau County's assessment resulted in significant increases for some homeowners and their property, it's important to be aware that the school district only receives the amount of the tax levy, no more and no less. Another important factor in determining taxes that is controlled by Nassau County is the adjusted base proportions. There are 4 property classes in Nassau County. Class 1 is homeowners, Class 2 is co-ops and condos, utilities is 3, and commercial property is 4. The county annually shifts the amount of the levy that is paid by each of these 4 property classes. So as you can see in the pie chart, in the current school year, homeowners or Class 1 property owners pay 79.78% of the school tax levy, and Commercial properties pay the next highest proportion of 17.32%. I thought it would be useful to look at some real-life examples to show how taxes are derived and how the assessment system is impacting them. I have here neighboring properties on the same street, one with a school tax decrease and one with a school tax increase. And this information was taken directly from the Nassau County Department of Assessment website, where this is all publicly available. So if you look at those two charts with property 1 and 2, you can see that, first of all, there was a significant increase from the 1920 to the 2021 school years, essentially going from $500,000 and change to over $1 million for both of these property. And that's the result of the reassessment process. And I also pointed out that how a property's value moves relative to the rest of the district also impacts what happens to an individual's piece of the pie. So let's just look at property 1 in 21-22. If you go third row from the bottom of that chart, you're looking at taxable value. So the taxable value of property 1 increased from 612 to 633. And that resulted in a 3.43% change in the value of that property. Because overall, the Syosset District assessed values went up by 12%, this went up less. They wound up with a smaller piece of the tax levy pie and saw a decrease in their taxes of 6.5%. The property 2 on the right, they also had an increase in their taxable value of over 16%. So that's above the average assessed value. And they saw an increase in their taxes of 4.9%. I think it's interesting to notice that while in 2021 they have similar market values of slightly over $1 million, if you look at the amount of taxes that they pay, you can see that they're considerably different. Property 1 is paying almost $18,000 in school taxes versus $14,000 for property 2. So in this comparison, the property paying the higher amount of taxes is having a decrease, and the one paying the lower amount is having an increase. So in 2021, that difference was $4,000 between these two properties, and this year the difference shrank to about $2,200. You have one more example. This is a different street, but neighboring properties. One saw a school tax decrease of almost $1,800, while the other saw an increase of almost $1,700. And again, a similar trend. You can see the taxable value declined for property 1, and so they saw a fairly substantial decrease in their taxes. Again, property 2 had a more significant increase in their taxable value, and therefore saw a significant increase in their taxes. And they also moved closer together over the 2 years. In last year, the difference in their taxes was about $2,700. This year, the difference narrowed to within $850. And again, this is not driven, the differences that you're seeing are not driven by the school district. We're responsible for the 1.9% increase in the tax levy. And how that amount gets distributed to become a 14.3% decrease in one property and a 16.8% increase in another is solely the result of the Nassau County system of assessment and the reassessment that is being phased in. So I would just want to recap that the school district only controls the tax levy, which is the amount of money that it needs to fund its operation. While the county may increase values for homeowners, the district does not get any additional funding as a result. We only get the levy amount. If residents have questions about their assessments and their property values, there's a lot of information on the Department of Assessment's website.
Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Rufo on this? All right, thank you so much for that explanation.
One of the wonderful things that we get to do here is recognize some of the successes of our students. In pre-COVID times, we would invite them to come to a board meeting so we could congratulate them in person. But in these times, we have to recognize them in absentia. But it's my privilege to recognize a number of our National Merit Scholarship Program semifinalists and commended students. And I do believe we'll at least be able to show you their faces as I read their names. So they are Sabrina Chen, Ethan Chu, Rohan Chatra, Alex Hay, Caroline Su, Vivian Huang, and Uni Kim. And there are several slides. Christine Ling, David Liu, Shivanji Salhotra, David Wang, Wesley Zhu, and Caroline Zhu. Prisha Arora, Joshua Burrows, Ethan Chen, Faith Chen, Isabella Chen, Eric Shizhen Chen, and Edward Duan. Tiffany Gao, Emily Goldman, Nathan Han, Iris Ho, Elena Hong, and Amanda Huang. Eric Huang, Ashley Young, Su Yun Young, Jim Kay, Mark Kimoto, Joyce Koo, and Owen Kyler Wank. Azam Lalani, Michael Lan, Alexandra Langman, Alex Larson, Jonathan Lee, and Julian Lee. Vivian Lin, Frank Liu, Michael Manishan, Sebastian Eng, Gayatri Ramakrishnan, Michael Schneider, Lauren Schwartz. Rishi Shah, Noah Silverman, Christina Singh, Sean Song, Jonathan Sun, and Andor Shakaris. Claire Tong, Harish Varadarajan, Sophie Wang, James Wong, Ginny Yang, Andrew Zhang, and Matthew Zhang. Congratulations to all of them. And now to report on the high school program, I believe we have one of those students, Caroline Zhu, who is the student government representative.
Hi, my name is Caroline Zhu, and I am the Senate President at Syosset High School Student Government this year. And I'm here today to highlight some of our high school's events from the last month. Starting off with student government. We've been having meetings monthly with Dr. Durante and administration, as well as Senate officer meetings every Monday morning to discuss the questions and concerns that our student body has, as well as planning and organizing school events, which include, first, in early September, we had our student election process for student government's 9th grade officers. We also had our Spirit Week on September 20th to the 24th, where students dressed up in different themes every day to show their school spirit. On September 21st, the entire Syosset High School student body also participated in the walkathon to support the Desi Strong Foundation, where we raised over $2,000. We also had our annual blood drive on October 6th and our health fair on October 14th, where over 20 clubs and departments set up stands on topics ranging in everything from mental health to weightlifting to stress management to the importance of sunscreen. Our pep rally is coming up on Friday, October 22nd, as well as our carnival from October 22nd to October 24th. We've distributed admission tickets to all 10 schools in Syosset, hung up flyers around town, and in the high school alone, over 35 clubs and counting are planning to fundraise at the carnival this year. In other news, we have also added a couple of new clubs to Syosset High School's repertoire of clubs, including first the Hydroponics Group, which is a group dedicated to helping students learn about hydroponic farming, which is a sustainable way of growing plants without soil. We've also had a student create we've also approved the HOSA Club, which stands for Health Occupations Students of America, which is a competition club for those interested in pursuing medicine in the future. We also have students planning to host economics and finance workshops with the business departments. And in terms of what our other clubs have been doing, everybody is happy to be back and meeting in person again. We have competition clubs like DECA, Model Congress, Model UN, Mock Trial, Forensics, OVA that are planning and already having in-person tournaments this year. Our community service clubs have a myriad of fundraisers coming up, everything from Chipotle fundraisers to a dance marathon held by Interact, to clothing drives held by Women in Business, to even a thrift shop, which is going to be held by ACT. And of course, we can't forget our annual Halloween candy drive. We also have all of our community groups and career clubs meeting in person, inviting guest speakers, groups like Nature of Americans finally being able to get together outside. And overall, our over 100 clubs and groups in the high school are finally meeting in person again. And students can find all of these groups and their meeting times on the school website. That's all for now. Thank you so much.
And I know that the students, not just at the high school, but everywhere, have been really excited to resume a lot of the normal activities that they have really come to appreciate and that we've all learned to appreciate a lot more in their absence this last year. And the energy of having all the students back in the high school is definitely palpable, and it's been really exciting to see. As we're getting set up for the next presentation, I just want to draw the board and the public's attention to one of the items on our agenda. As we've been talking about with some frequency, one of the major challenges this year as a consequence of the pandemic has been the difficulty in securing adequate bus drivers for our fleet, not just here in Syosset, but this is an industry-wide problem. So one of the things we've tried to do as a school district is to control as much of our own destiny as we possibly can, and we're going to, hopefully, with the board's approval, work on a plan that will allow us to take some of our staff who already have commercial driver's licenses, give them the additional training that they need in order to drive buses, and rent a few buses so that in the event that our bus company is unable to service us with a route or two, we'll be able to swing into action to make sure that no child is left without a way to get to school. So as we go into the winter months, and we all know that disease is more prevalent in the winter months, that it certainly means that our bus drivers will probably have some more sick days, and we want to make sure that between us and our bus company, we're prepared to cover that. They are certainly aggressively recruiting drivers, and obviously our first choice is to have them do the transportation for the school district, but we think we've hit upon a cost-effective way of making sure that we have a backup plan B in the event that we need one. So I know that the board has asked a number of questions over the last several years about the work that we do to try and protect the school district's digital assets. Certainly we read in the newspapers with some frequency about the attacks that occur on all kinds of entities, ransomware and other kinds of threats that come from the internet. Obviously we take those concerns very seriously, and we periodically report to the board of the efforts that we've put into place to try and keep our students safe online, keep our staff safe online, and protect the assets of the school district. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ms. Christine Payne, who is our Director of Information Technology Services, and Ms. Kelly Fokianos, who is a staff developer here with our staff, and library and media technology specialist. So please.
Good evening. As Coordinator of Instructional and Administrative Technology, and as a Data Protection Officer, I'm pleased to present our ScioStrong and ScioSecure learning environment that includes protection for student data privacy and network security. Also presenting tonight is our secondary staff developer, Kelly Fokianos, who works closely with me, our staff, and our students. Why is student data privacy important? In 1974, before the internet, Senator William Buckley of New York thought it was very important and sponsored the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, known as FERPA. FERPA limits access to student educational records without prior parental consent. It protects student academic and personally identifiable information. More protections were added in 1978 with the Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment. This amendment protects students from participating in surveys or evaluations that might reveal personal data without parental consent. And then the internet happened. Personally identifiable information, also known as PII, moved from paper to digital and becomes available everywhere. Congress passes the Children's Online Protection Act, or COPA, in April of 2000. COPA addresses the rapid growth of online marketing and gaming sites that collect data on children under the age of 13 without parental knowledge or consent. Websites are now required to post a privacy policy anywhere data is collected. In 2014, New York State Education Department enacted Education Law 2D that includes enhanced protections of PII held by schools and school districts. This includes student records, teacher evaluations, and administrative documents. The law includes standards for securing data and computing networks. With all these laws, how do we in Syosset protect student data? Education Law 2D provides the framework. The framework includes the protection of PII and school data through network security and best practices. The framework includes a Parent Bill of Rights, policies, reporting procedures, action plans, and annual staff training. As a data protection officer, I work with administration to ensure that contractual and compliance requirements are identified and addressed. The Syosset Board of Education has adopted key policies that address the federal and New York State laws. These include policies on internet safety, student privacy, acceptable use of the computing network and data, and management of student records. A plain language summary and links to the district's work within this framework can be found on the district website in the student privacy section of the parent menu.
So what is PII? Personally identifiable information, which we refer to as PII or PI, is information that can be used to identify, contact, or locate a single person. This can include contact information and demographic information, such as your name, age, race, ethnicity, and gender, and medical records. Family members and household relationships are identified and recorded. We also store educational records, which include transcripts, attendance, grades, and educational plans. These are all the things we need to understand the whole child. Why is PII and network security so important? Keeping our staff and student PII and our network secure can help protect against identity theft, ransomware attacks, and any disruption or denial of service that would disrupt our school day. Our goals with the security measures we have in place lead to a safe, active, and productive learning environment for our educational community. In cases of identity theft, attackers are trying to steal student identity, which students may not realize until much later in their life. Ransomware attacks are mitigated because we have a secure network and backups in place. If our network is disrupted, it could slow our ability to use the internet to perform any school and work-related tasks during the school day. In a few instances, our network could come to a stop.
So how do we protect against these threats? Even before Education Law 2D, we've been working to create a secure computing environment in our schools. Over the past 2 years, we've implemented security upgrades that include leading enterprise and industry standards. Individual firewalls around each computer, each building, and the entire district allow us to isolate a problem and immediately protect the rest of the district. Copies of our data stored in multiple secure cloud locations protected by their own firewalls allowed us to recover data quickly. Separate backup schedules provide access to data copied at different time periods. Offline backups provide data that cannot be touched by network communication and allow for threat-free recovery. Tight email security using advanced threat protection quarantines potentially dangerous emails or emails using trickery to obtain access to network accounts or PII.
With the Syosset learning environment in the cloud, how do students and teachers learn and teach online safely? With ClassLink, we provide our students and staff a secure single sign-on to our district-approved apps and programs. You can think of this like a Syosset App Store or our walled garden of apps. Students sign into their district-provided Chromebook and are brought directly to ClassLink to access their resources. Students can click on an app icon and are signed in quickly and securely to the program they need. ClassLink provides ease of access to our approved tools from a secure platform. So what are the tools that work within this safe environment? Our staff and students use district-provided devices, such as Chromebooks, laptops, and desktops. Our Syosset ClassLink platform is updated to reflect the latest access to our secure and approved apps. A few programs for our advanced courses are accessible through virtual desktops. And our IT department pushes updates out to our secure network to ensure that we have the latest securities. Staff are continually educated on our district policies and procedures annually. Teachers and staff support students in their practice of digital citizenship and safe computing. In our Syosset learning community, we train, support, and communicate. Annual training takes place to review the federal and state data privacy laws. At new teacher orientation, we go deeply into the security and educational technology tools that are approved for our district use. We review secure email practices such as encrypting emails that contain personally identifiable information when sending emails to recipients outside of our domain. We promote reviewing emails from external senders and previewing attachments before downloading, opening, or forwarding. Building support for our staff and students is available through each library media center. Communications are frequent from team members and are shared out to the district. We create multimedia and video tutorials to support staff and students and provide training in a variety of in-person and virtual formats. Our goal is to train, support, and communicate these security practices to our entire educational community.
We'd like to thank the Board of Education, Dr. Rogers, and our outstanding staff for supporting the work of creating a safe and secure learning environment for our students that enhances their learning and prepares each student for the challenges of an ever-changing world. Thank you.
Does the board have any questions about the presentation? Okay, great. We are going to start audience to the... Sorry? Oh, sorry.
So I would just like to comment on the presentation a little bit. This is one of the challenges, one of the new challenges that all school districts are facing. Obviously, we want to make sure that we have a strong and secure environment here, but that means that we're constantly making adjustments. One of the challenges, it's said in this, in the world of internet services, that if the service is free, you are the product. And so while there are a lot of attractive services online that may not have a cost, the worry is that the cost of those services is leaking of some kind of personally identifiable information. So what we do is we make sure that those apps that are in our Syosset App Store are all with companies that we have contracts with. Those contracts are specifically designed to be compliant with EdLaw 2D. What that means is that the companies verify to us the procedures that they have in place to make sure that our student data, our staff data is not aggregated and resold to anyone else, is not available on the internet. It is encrypted in motion and at rest. What that means is, as it's going back and forth on the internet, it needs to be encrypted, and if it's stored anywhere, it needs to be encrypted. And unless one of these companies will agree to all of the provisions that makes that app compliant with Ed Law 2D, we don't have a relationship with them. So I know that occasionally that can be frustrating because there are some fun, exciting tools out there and familiar tools, but we want to make sure that we have only approved tools here. And I really appreciate the patience of our teachers as we go through and make sure that we have the safest possible network here. So I did want to just comment on that. Thank you.
Okay, we'll begin audience to the public. Just a few rules to start. For those of you who have never been to audience to the public before, there's a podium that we'll ask you to come up and speak at. But before you speak, we'd like you to introduce yourselves to us by name, and there is a ledger at the podium where you'll write your name and address. And the reason why we do that is twofold. Number one, you have to be a resident in order to speak at audience to the public. And number two, if we can't answer your question or comment, we need a way to get back to you. You will have an initial 4 minutes to make a comment or ask a question. At the end of your 4 minutes, you'll please be seated. After everyone has had a chance to speak for the initial 4 minutes, we will then take the opportunity to answer questions if there are any, or respond to comments. If at that time someone wants a second chance, and there is time, you can have another 4 minutes to make a comment or a question, and we'll endeavor to answer that as well. We don't talk about specific teachers or staff or students because of privacy rules and education rules. We won't entertain that discussion at all. So with that, please feel free to come up.
Hi, Tanya Getz, Pine Road, Syosset, and I have a daughter who's graduated from the high school, the class of 2021, and a son in the middle school. So I'm here to ask a question about recent news that from earlier this year, and just a little note from the Harvard Crimson. From earlier this year, the College Board will permanently eliminate the SAT subject tests and the SAT optional essay to better adapt to the pandemic era admissions process, the company announced last Tuesday. So the subject tests have been eliminated by the SAT. I'm going to further quote from the executive director of the Princeton Review Foundation, who described the use of the SAT subject test and the SAT essay and college admissions and steadily decreasing. The tests of both the essay and subject tests are several years overdue, Rosner wrote. Harvard will eventually see the light and jettison the SAT, but maybe not without a fight. So for this year, Harvard has, however, made the SAT again optional. And that's not the subject test now. That's the regular SAT. College admissions are changing dramatically and will continue to change. My issue here, though, is not to talk about how that impacts the college admissions for juniors and seniors, but to talk about how the retirement of the SAT subject tests affects Syosset freshmen. I first went up to the podium to speak at a Syosset board meeting when my daughter was a freshman, as I was so concerned about the transition process that was going on for freshmen from 8th to 9th grade, particularly for those in the honors cohort, which my daughter was a part of. And I felt the transition didn't allow enough of a ramp between middle school and high school. It was an overwhelming workload of homework, and I thought it posed health challenges for the freshmen. I think that was borne out later in the year when we had a freshman who didn't graduate with the rest of the class of 2021. So I think what I wanted to bring up was that the SAT subject test was used for the curriculum for honors bio in Syosset. That was what the curriculum was geared for. The honors curriculum included a lot of curriculum that is high-level biology. Some of the curriculum was on the MCATs that my husband took, and it contained a lot of chemistry. Chemistry that the students hadn't yet had because they hadn't had chemistry. And so it was a lot of rote memorization without the scaffolding to understand the conceptual concepts of chemistry. So my question in short is, how is the district going to adapt the honors bio class to perhaps lighten the load on the student freshmen who are only 17 and are already accelerated because they're taking honors bio, and bio is typically in New York State a 10th grade course. A lot of New Yorkers take earth science. So what is being done about that? I did have a brief conversation with our science coordinator, Mr. Laverso, about this earlier this week, but I wanted to at least bring it to the attention of the board that I've asked the question, and I'd also like to see it addressed in the science presentation that's coming up to the PTSA. Thanks.
Is there anyone else who would like to come up for audience to the public?
Hello, everyone. My name is Kareem Mazawala. I've got 3 kids in the school system, 1 in high school and 2 in middle school, and I'm here to speak in favor of the installation of the lights on the field, on the turf field. I'm not sure, I see it as an item on the agenda. I'm not sure if it's going to be voted on today or not, or if it's just going to be discussed, but I think that this doesn't really require too much discussion. I think it's an absolutely necessary item. We've got a brand new turf field over here. My 2 sons, they play football, but this field is also can be used for soccer, for lacrosse, for many other sports, and having the lights really makes it a lot more easier and better. Most of the football games are played across the country in high school on Friday nights, and I think this is a great time for us to also have games. Many of the other high schools here on the island that have brand new fields, they have lights as well. I was just at a game a few weeks ago at Freeport High School for one of my son's game. There had to be maybe a few hundred people at the game. I mean, the excitement, the level of interest from all different kids that weren't just playing football, with cheerleaders, kick line. I mean, it was just a great atmosphere. I had brought my older daughter who's in medical school with me, and she said, "Dad, this feels like better than an NFL game." So, I mean, it brings the whole community together when we have these kind of games done at night. And as you all know, sports is an essential part of the student's life. So I just wanted to bring that as a point, and I don't know if it's going to be voted on today or not. Thank you so much for your time. Do we have to write something, or we don't need to write anything?
If you could please just write your name and address.
Name and address, okay.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Anthony Alexander. I have two sons. One just graduated 2021, proud member of Syosset community, moved on to Providence, and I have a 4th grader, so I have a nice big gap. I have volunteered in this community for about 16 years. Even though I'm not formally an educator, I consider myself an educator because I have been coaching a lot of kids, too many kids, but I love it. You know, I love the sport, I love kids, I love teaching them. And the reason why I bring this all up is because when we talk about these lights, it's not just about the sports. You know, I've seen really talented kids, really challenged kids. You know, just being a part of something is a huge deal. The more opportunity we can give people to be a part of something, so even if they're taking a football game or a lacrosse game, the fact that all these clubs could have something to do with it. Photography club, video club, you know, band. I mean, why, you know, marching band. I mean, when I was, you know, Friday Night Lights were huge when I was growing up. I mean, the whole community came out. And the word community that you said, it's just so big with me. You know, I don't volunteer my time just simply for lacrosse. If I told you my whole life story, I don't know if you'd laugh or cry, but the bottom line is lacrosse gave me an avenue, but the community is what I learned from it, right? That whole journey was about people saying, just kind of doing the same thing, being supportive of each other. I don't think there's a lot of it right now. I've had the benefit of having an older son and a younger son, and I'm going to tell you there's two distinct paths that they're both on. One was completely about, everybody on board, doing everything together, supporting each other, and one is all about me. It's like a me world right now, and it's upsetting. So as a coach, I just, from a team aspect, and any team that I've ever coached, it's always been about the team. I view this as a community or an opportunity to add these lights so that more people have that opportunity, right? Not just the sports, but everything that surrounds the sports, right? I mean, when's the last time you had a pep rally with, the whole community came? That's what I grew up with. Why can't these kids feel a sense of pride? Even if they have nothing to do with football, lacrosse, whatever it is, going to the game on a Friday night not only is a productive way to use their Friday night instead of playing Xbox or doing whatever the hell they do, right? But I'm sorry. It bothers me because I know all these kids very, very well, right? The trouble they get in with phones, the trouble they could get in just because they're not doing something productive. Friday night after school, they get a chance to go see, they get to be a part of their community. They feel a sense of pride, belonging to something bigger than themselves. The lights are going to add to this. They're not going to detract from it in any way, right? So I hope I don't know if you're voting on it, or I just wanted to add those 2 cents. I volunteer my time like you do. I want to see the community get better, not retract. I think this is a good, positive thing for us. So thank you.
Good evening. My name's Joe Cawley. I never was a sports guy. I was a computer geek. I'd be hacking into the systems that they protecting when I was younger. And I didn't have a whole lot of value for sports, even when I was an instructor at Pace University downtown. It's only after I came here and I had children I realized the tremendous value of sports. Everyone talks about negative pressure. No one talks about positive peer pressure. I've seen the groups. I've seen it with my kids. I've seen it with other kids. I've seen how they take a kid who's struggling and help them go the right path. They keep them out of trouble with drugs and a million other things. And for that reason alone, I can't speak highly enough to the instruction that my children got here with the sports program. And again, I cannot name 10 sports guys to save my life. But from an education, from a keeping children on the right path point of view, how it builds team, it teaches them how to work together, how to function in society, builds their confidence and pushes them ahead in so many ways I can't begin to articulate. I'm in favor of the lights. So thank you very much for your time. Have a great day.
Hello, Board. My name is Adam Waxer, 51 Warner Lane. I have 2 children in the district. I have a junior and I have a current 8th grade boy. I'm currently the president of the Syosset Youth Lacrosse Program as well. And like some of my other people who said some things that I don't want to reiterate it, but I just wanted to do some things that maybe fact. Just read off some other school districts that are kind of like our size, that we consider ourselves Section 8 big schools. Freeport, Oceanside, Massapequa, Farmingdale, Herricks, Port Washington, Plainview, Cold Spring Harbor with 2, Bethpage with 2. Other school districts, also big and small: Roosevelt, MacArthur, Division, Southside, Glen Cove, Seaford, Island Trees, Malvern, Wheatley, Westbury, Manhasset also 2. Uniondale and Baldwin both have approved bonds for lights. Now go to the other side of the ledger. Hempstead, Hicksville, East Meadow, Syosset. We're on the minority side of having facilities that do not have lights. So I find that to be appalling for the community that we live in, that we do not have facilities compared to many of other towns in our district. People talk about athletics. Yes, between all our programs, our varsity, junior varsities, middle school programs, how great it would be that they can use this unbelievable facility. We've also had in the past, sometimes we bust our kids over to the town of Oyster Bay, Syosset Woodbury Park, and due to some busing issues, we haven't been able to do that this year. So again, in the words, Dr. Rogers, control what we can control. You're correct. We could not control the busing situation. We never knew about that. This is something we can control by having these lights here to allow our kids to be able to use these facilities. But the word, a lot of people have been talking about it. I wanted to talk about the word community, because again, I don't want this to be just about athletics. We have a beautiful track. And I know a lot of these arguments we had discussions about when we talked about Stillwell Park. Okay? Stillwell Park would have been a place potentially, for safety issues to allow residents of this town to utilize some services. We have an unbelievable track that many people, including my neighbor, who says he's never has the opportunity to use the track during the fall. Why? During school days, he's not allowed to use it because of safety issues. No resident is allowed to come up to school premises. After school, can't do it as well because of all the athletic programs that are there. And then the evening time comes and it becomes dark and nobody can use it. So this would be something that many of our community members who wanted and approved the track and other parts of the facilities would be able to utilize it. Interesting story again. Over the summertime, we were at MacArthur High School. Lights were on, summertime, beautiful day, while there was a summer league lacrosse program going on. In just around the area, many kids were just riding up on their bicycles, spike ball, wiffle ball, just a sense of community. Kids were there, 20, 30, 40, 50 kids, all in a safe environment to be able to hang out during the summer. Our children don't have that environment. We have no place for our children to go to safely, congregate in a safe environment. So I would love for you guys to take that into consideration as well, not so much about athletics. A couple of questions I guess I would like for you guys to perhaps discuss. Nobody understands the process. Would be to explain to us the process, voting, not voting, how that would go through, state approvals, budgets, reserves, how all that works. One other thing, I guess a question was, back in 2019 when we did have the bond and the turf approval, I just wanted to ask a question. I did see something about a resolution that talked about conduits and turf and lighting conduits already being approved, and also close to $900,000 in approval. So just want to understand the process and the conduits, if that could be explained as well. Thank you very much.
So where do I sign?
They've got it.
Oh, he's got it, okay. Good evening, board and residents of Syosset. We've talked a lot about the benefits for...
I'm sorry, what's your name?
I'm sorry, my name is Barry Brogy.
Thank you.
I live in Marlene Drive in Syosset. I got two kids in Syosset High School. One's a senior, one's a freshman. We've talked about a lot of positive about having lighting in the field and having games Friday night and having kids out there for different events. But there's one thing we haven't really discussed. The fact is, we put a lot of pride in our academic achievements in Syosset, and a lot of these achievements are based on colleges our kids get into, and all this testing takes part on Saturday. And right now, with the current situation, the kids are taking a 3-4 hour test on Saturday morning, and then going out to the field Saturday afternoon, and really putting more undue stress on the kids than is necessary. If we could have the ability to play games on a Friday night, it would clear the mind, give more opportunities to relax Saturday morning, do what you need to do in the testing front, and move forward. So that's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Hi, Peter Barkoff, 143 Burtis Lane in Syosset. I'll be honest, I didn't prepare anything to say tonight, but after everyone spoke before me, I feel like I have to come up here and say something on behalf of the Lights as well. I'm a Syosset alumni myself. I played soccer on the field there. I have 3 boys in Berry Hill, kindergarten, 3rd grade, 5th grade. I can tell you that from the point of view of just pride in the school, right now we don't have really a whole lot of it, right? Games happen on Saturdays for football, soccer games throughout the week, lacrosse games, maybe during the week and on a weekend occasionally, but no one really goes, right? So, I can tell you that just having everyone come down to the games, pride in the school. You know, we talk about academic achievement. We're up here talking about taxes, you know, and all those things that that happen in Syosset. But if we had more pride in our school through athletics, you know, maybe the community comes down, watches some games. Maybe they can understand where all the tax dollars are going. They have more pride in the community. They can rally around everybody. I know everyone else talked about coming down on Friday nights and giving the kids a place to go. You know, I have 3 boys. Obviously, this would, you know, personally benefit my boys coming through playing lacrosse with Tony and, you know, Waxer's teams, which they do now. But, you know, coming through the school and having a place to go and having a lot of pride, having colleges come down and recruit, it just increases the exposure of the school and makes everybody in the community happier, you know, come down and watch the games. I think it's just really important. I think that, like Adam said, not having lights on a field is, you know, you get to use it for, what, a couple hours in the wintertime. It starts to get, you know, it starts to get dark early in the fall. We get this beautiful field, and you can't even use it. So I think it's just really important. So I just wanted to say a couple things. Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone else?
Patrick Dillon, 18 Winthrop Avenue, Syosset. Good evening, everybody, the board, fellow residents. I'd just like to state that I have a daughter in the 11th grade, and my son is in the 10th grade. And my son does play football here in Syosset. And I am in favor, me and my family, and quite a few of the residents that live on my block. They may be listening in this evening. I think it gives the kids great opportunity on a Friday night to come out. And, you know, also for the other programs, track and the soccer. And maybe you can clarify what your thinking is. You know, think about it. There's going to be lights at the carnival coming up. That creates, you know, a lot of positive energy. Another great thing is even for the pep rally. I grew up went to Holy Trinity High School, and I believe we had lights too over in Hicksville. And, you know, we had the pep rally. And one important thing you may want to consider is the pep rally. You know, I think that's a great idea, tying that in with the Friday nights. Get a parade, the community, the neighborhood. That's what it's all about. Representing, you know. I know everybody has a busy life, but it's, I mean, I never went to a lot of football games in high school, but this is positive energy. And these kids are really polite. Hey, nice hat there, buddy. Hey, how you doing? I mean, these kids are polite, especially for all the pressure and stuff that's going on. So I just wanted to voice, in my opinion, me and my family, we are in favor of Friday night lights. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wants to speak to audience of the public?
Hello, Deborah Concanon Seglia, son in senior grade and a daughter as a sophomore. And as I listen to everybody's points, they're wonderful, strong, positive points that the lights can bring to the field. And one thing I have to say, as a previous coach for PAL, lacrosse, I've coached for volleyball also, but going back to lacrosse, using that as an example, the girls have, well, they have commented to me that it is a beautiful field, but they're proud of it, but they can't share it with everyone else that they compete with. My son, who was on track, we traveled everywhere for all the track events, but it never happened back in Syosset. So the kids want to show off this new field. I hear it from them. And they don't want to just show it off in the daytime. They want to show it off in the nighttime, too, with the benefit of the lights, bringing it home. That's where they want it, on a Friday night, for all the reasons that they said, because what better place to be on a Friday night but at home showing it off to everyone else? I hope you get my point. Thank you. So I'm speaking for the kids, yeah. Leave it here? Leave it here? Thank you.
Is there anyone who hasn't spoken yet who'd like to come up? Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jim Kuhn. I have 2 daughters. The older one, Katie, she's in the 9th grade, and the younger one, Grace, she's in the 7th grade in middle school. So I was actually watching and listening the meeting from home on the video, and I realized that I don't have a chance to ask any questions from home. So that's why I took the car, I drove here. I wish there's a way, for parents that was attending remotely those BOE meetings from home, they can submit questions or questionnaires online. That'll be very convenient for the parents who are not here. But again, it's just one of my ideas. So anyway, I took myself here. I actually listened the early part of the the agenda that talks about privacy, protections, cybersecurity on the kids' use of devices, computers for school. So my question is, when they took their Chromebook home, what kind of security measures that is actually installed on the Chromebook that can maintain the same security measure, the postures, when they are no longer on campus? I don't know if the IT staff are still here. I was just curious, how they maintain that level of security and privacy protections on the device that they bring from school to home. That's the only question I have.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who has not yet come up for audience to the public? Okay.
Great. So obviously I'll group these things together. The first, Ms. Getz, your question about how the bio curriculum will change over time. It's my understanding that some changes to the biology curriculum have occurred already. I'll confess that I have not immersed myself in those changes, and as you mentioned, the announcement about the SAT is only a week old at this point. So it is something that I promise I will circle back to, and I'll get some more information about how the biology curriculum is changing. And as a biochemistry major myself, it's a topic I'm particularly interested in. So it'll be fun for me to learn how the curriculum may be changing and to think about how much it's changed since, well, we won't talk about how long ago it was when I was in undergrad. But thank you for that comment and your point. The board is going to have a discussion later in the meeting, and I suspect that a number of the questions that were posed about the process for lights and the conduit that was installed will probably be part of the board's questioning of me. So rather than repeat myself, I'll wait for that. If any of those questions are not addressed by the board's questioning of me, I will make sure to return to them and address them. And then lastly, the question about the use of the devices when students are at home. All of the devices have a filtering mechanism on them, and they also have a product called GoGuardian. And what GoGuardian does is it restricts the sites that students can visit. It also will alert us if a student searches for something that is inappropriate or something that is flagged for self-harm. So we will get those alerts because of the use of GoGuardian. So even though those devices are not on the district's network, we are responsible for making sure that those devices are protected. So that's actually one of the reasons why we prefer for students to use the district's device, because that provides us with an additional layer of control over those devices. Obviously, it's something we take very seriously and we put a lot of energy and time into. And if you have further questions you'd like to follow up with any one of us, call my office and I'll put you in touch with somebody who can give you even more detail.
And I'd just also like to add, sir, that there is a way to submit a question to be asked at the board during audience to the public. If you go on the school website and you go to Board of Education, you can submit your question to all board members. There's a button to click. You can click that. Obviously, you would have to do that ahead of the board meeting for us to see it in time. But you can do that, and we will certainly address it, whether you're here or not.
Okay. Is there anyone that wants to come up a second time for 4 minutes? Yep, Tanya.
Okay, couple of things. I'm going to try to fit them in. With regard to the lighting situation, I am a proud graduate of '87 from UConn, and when I covered UConn sports as a Connecticut Daily Campus reporter, Calhoun was just being recruited, and there was a big debate on whether they should pay his salary. And the argument pro was that it'll transform the university. It will give UConn much more school spirit, et cetera, et cetera. I have to say, having seen the results of that, it was absolutely true. UConn's sports program transformed the campus in so many ways I can't even say. And so I do think sports create community, and I think the lights are a very compelling idea to make use of our existing fields. Okay, so now I'm going to go to another issue that I've asked on more than one occasion. But one of the things I really so admired the administration and the board for in the pandemic was the following of CDC guidelines with how it handled the opening of the schools, even during the pandemic. Mask requirements, 6 feet. It was all done with thought and a great deal of care. And we really thank the board and the administration for how it handled the health of our students. But there's another issue that's so important, and it predates the pandemic, and that's adolescents getting enough sleep. And I'm going to read from the CDC, Center for Disease Control. Schools start too early. According to the 2014 School Health Policies and Practices Study, 93% of high schools, 83% of middle schools in the U.S. started before 8:30. This, although the American Academy of Pediatrics has recommended that middle and high schools start at 8:30 a.m. or later to give students the opportunity to get the amount of sleep they need. They further go on to note that everyone can play an important role. There's that community aspect again. And they suggest what parents can do. And one of them is to contact local school officials about later start times. That's what I'm here doing tonight. So I did write Dr. Rogers in the summer, and I took a look at our local high school times of comparable schools. When you look at Roslyn, Jericho, Great Neck, they all start later than 8. We're one of the earlier start times on Long Island. And I think in the peer group of Syosset that Syosset has. And I think we really have to consider whether that is a good thing to be doing, especially as we accelerate our students so much. And they enter the school and they're taking a lot of APs at the same time, especially the juniors and seniors, many of them. And the freshmen come in and they are not yet fully through their maturation process. And yet they enter and they have a sleep deprivation with the homework load. And then you have Canvas being used and deadlines for homework being set by teachers at 12 midnight. And this is the deadline. Now, one would say, well, that's because maybe, well, why can't a student go to sleep if the class is at 1 p.m. the next day and then work on it in the morning, having slept, So this is something that we really need to address as a district, I think, and we already did a survey on it, but then the pandemic preempted any follow-up. Thanks.
I would say I would love to find a magic wand. I'll take one step back. This morning I was invited to Berry Hill Elementary School to be their pick a reading partner, secret reader this morning, and I went in a robe and a wizard hat and I read Harry Potter to the kids. And I wish I had a magic wand, like I have this morning, that would find a way to accomplish a later high school start time for all the reasons that you state. The district, prior to the pandemic, about 2 years before the pandemic, even went so far as to hire a consultant to help us try to think through some of the busing challenges that are involved in moving the high school start time, because with our current configuration, the only way we would be able to do a later high school start time is to do a significantly later elementary start time. And my sense is that that's just not feasible for parents who are working to have their children start in elementary school 20 minutes later so that we can push the high school back 20 minutes. So we use at our peak about 140 buses a day. And right now we're struggling to staff even those 140 buses with drivers. And really at the time, the conclusion that I shared with the board, the disappointing conclusion I shared with the board, was our two choices were either to completely rearrange start times and start much later for everyone, which, as I said, I don't think is feasible, or spend a lot more money to duplicate busing because there would be even greater peak times if we had two different sets of schools starting simultaneously. Before, the limitation on that was money. Now the limitation on that is drivers, even if the money were available to be spent. That doesn't mean that I've lost, or that the board has lost sight of that as a goal. So I do think that it's important. It is a really daunting logistical challenge. It is one that we did put on the back burner during the pandemic, but it is one that I hope to return to as we emerge from the pandemic, because I agree with you that all of the research suggests that late adolescence circadian rhythms lead them to more optimal sleep patterns if they can sleep later in the morning. So that is something that we're going to continue to work on. I don't have an update for you, but I will say as an orientation, I agree.
And the support from the board in continuing that project is there. We were disappointed in the results of the consultant, not because they didn't do a good job, but because the options available to us just weren't feasible. So more to come, hopefully, on that. So that concludes audience to the public. Thank you all for making your statements and taking the time. We'll begin our discussion item, and we've got one, and that's the installation of the field lighting at the turf field. And I put this on the agenda because I wanted to see whether there was board interest in beginning the process of installing lights on the turf field. When we built the turf field, we laid the conduit into the turf because we anticipated that there might be a future lighting project, and we wanted to make sure that we put it in at that point so that we didn't destroy all the beautiful work that we did. When we began talking with our teams when creating the Stillwell plans, it became abundantly clear how lights were not just a want for fall sports, but was a necessity for fall sports. Because as the season proceeds, it becomes dark so soon that practices and games can't fully take place without them. At that time, the board recognized how critical lights were to the proper functioning of fall sports and altered the project to include lights. Prior to the pandemic, our district's fall teams compensated for the lack of lights and the single turf field that we have by busing students to alternative locations so that their practices could take place on fields of the kind that they would eventually play games on. However, what this year has shown, and specifically as a result of the bus driver shortage and extreme busing issues, students are and teams are not able to function the way we need them to function, and they're not functioning the way we intended them to function. The other day I was sitting in front of a crowd from another school. It was another team's parents. It was a girls' JV soccer game. And I heard them talking about the fact that they came to our fields with their team a few days back, and in the last 10 minutes of the game they were playing in utter darkness. I've seen our kids play games and have had to call those games early due to lighting after all of that effort. I've seen them play in the dark. The busing has caused delays for teams to arrive on our fields, and the games become too dark to play. Because of the busing delays, we can't transport our students to the other fields as we had pre-pandemic. And having lights would have allowed us to stagger that field time so that they could all play on the field at one time or another. In addition to staggering practices, having later games, we could also have some outdoor events. I know one neighboring district who had a lovely PTA event on their lit fields, and it brought the community together. We have no reason to believe that busing will change next year. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. There's no way to tell whether the capacity for the company we use will return to pre-pandemic capacity. But even if it did, I think we've heard enough from fall sports, coaches, teams, players about how necessary it is to have these lights for proper functioning of their teams. Tonight, we can talk about the funding sources, the realistic timeline for a project like this, but I just wanted to start off a conversation by saying that, in my opinion, we can do this and we should do this. Rob?
Tracy, you couldn't have said it any better. I fully support the installation of lights at the turf field. We thought about this ahead of time, obviously with respect to the conduits, but obviously there were budgetary considerations, and we weren't sure how things would turn out. But I have seen firsthand that it is getting dark in the autumn and into the winter at an earlier hour, and we definitely need the lights. We have a beautiful turf field. Question obviously is where we will get the funding for this, but I hope that we can figure it out. Thank you.
Ms. Chang?
Okay. I'm also in full support of the project. Syosset School has been voted the best community for music education for years, and I do believe that we do have the potential, if there is one for sports, to be voted the best community for sports. We have very talented kids, very devoted parents, and we have beautiful fields, and there's no reason not to have the lighting. So I'm in full support of it. Thank you.
Lisa Koshia?
Thank you. I just wanted to say also that I am in full support of lights being put on the field. I have an 8th grader who plays soccer, as well as my son who graduated in 2020 who played for school soccer, and we have this beautiful field that we waited for years to be built. And it would be nice to see our school, like many other schools, for these kids to have the same opportunity as the kids from these other schools that they have as well. So I am in full support of it. I think it's not only important for our children, but also for our community in general. I agree with the outpouring of emails that we've had from our community, as well as all of our community members that are sitting in the audience that have spoken. And I just wanted to say that I am in full support. I only have one question. besides, I'm sure Dr. Rogers is going to go over how the timeline of events and funding and whatnot. But I had a question about security, as far as if the lights are going to be on in the evenings, what type of security would be there for our children if they wanted to use the field after hours, if a game is not being played, and also for our community members if they wanted to use the track and whatnot. So I guess my question would be, would there be a timeline for lights to be on or a usage time for our community to use the field as well? And the security. So that's all I wanted to say.
I am also in full support and I agree with everybody. And continuing with Lisa's question, I know one of the concerns was the security aspect of it in the outdoor night events. Is it possible, we have so many fathers here who are ready to be there, working together. Is it possible to have like a community members to form like a neighborhood watch so that there are enough security, enough people watching and making sure the crowd is cleared after like a Friday night event?
Ms. Falco?
So everybody was very well spoken, and I fully support the lights. I think from a logistical standpoint, it's not fair to our kids with all the busing and all the, I mean, they roll with it because they're flexible and they're resilient, but all the busing that they have to do and having their games called early and not being able to do things and not being able to have the home field advantage and not being able to have their community around them. And also, I think the point that a lot of the community members made about the joy and the community and the togetherness that the sports bring, and to have a Friday night game and to have everybody there to cheer, whether you're playing or part of it or just watching, and just a place for the kids to go to be together is really important to the community. And especially after, the last year and a half where people couldn't be together, I think it's really important that we try to bring that back and try to bring back as much joy and, pride and enthusiasm that we weren't able to have before or wasn't able to do because we didn't have the facilities, and that now we can. So if we could provide a place to bring everyone together to be kinder and feel more included, that would be fantastic. I do have one question for Dr. Rogers. I'm sure this is on your agenda of things to speak of, but I think if you could, just so people understand the process of how this would get moving and when it triggers a community vote or whether it doesn't, where the money comes from, how we vote on it, all the logistical aspects of the process, because I think not that many people in the community know exactly how the process would be, and I think it'd be really helpful for people to know how it moves forward. So thank you.
So there's a lot of advantages to this. And I'll throw one in here. I was a high school athlete. I'm not sure I was a very good one, but playing under the lights is one of the greatest experiences I had in high school. I don't remember much from high school, but that was a feeling I'll never forget. I hate the idea of denying children that, especially at home. I would like to hear, we've talked about security and obviously cost. If there's any other disadvantages, Dr. Rogers, that you see in doing this, because I think we all know there's a lot of advantages. Thank you.
Anna?
I cannot agree more. As everyone said here, parents coaching, it's a lot more than sports. It's community, it's spirit, and it's a no-brainer to me. To me, I view it as not as a project, but rather a continuation of a project that we started. Let's finish what we started. I'm sure it's a process. There's a time and there's a cost, right? So, but I'm confident we could find a way. And We're in good hands with Dr. Rogers. So we'll make it happen for our kids. I have faith in that. I trust we could do it.
Tom?
Thank you, Tracy. I agree with all of the board members and also with all the residents who came to speak. I played high school sports. We didn't have turf. We didn't have lights. We played on the baseball field. And when I came to Syosset and saw the turf field and the facilities and how safe the schools were, to me it was like paradise here. I think the community aspect is really important. When I went to high school, no one came out for the team. We had 20 kids on the high school team. But we did go undefeated, and that brought the whole community together. It gave us a sense of pride. To me, I was small. It gave me a lot of confidence that if I can excel at football, then maybe I can excel in college. Maybe I can excel and be a CPA, and maybe eventually I can get onto the school board. So I think all of those lessons, no, but it's true, because all of those lessons that you learned from sports carried on to help you persevere, not just through college, to any difficult thing that you encountered. So to me, sports took me to a better place, and I'm grateful to my coaches and to my teachers, and honestly, and my community, because they all stood behind me. And one quick story, when I went to play in college, I was tiny, and I was just getting beat up every day. So I remember that there was an older student who went to West Point, and at Thanksgiving, he was back home, and he was supposed to be playing football. And I remember I went up to him, and I said, well, what are you doing here? He said, well, I don't want to talk about it. I'm going to Hofstra now. So I remember he embarrassed himself, the school, his family, the community. So every time I thought of quitting, I thought, I can't be that kid. I can't go back to my community, to my friends, to my family, and tell them I quit. So I think the lessons learned in sports carry with you through the rest of your life. My other points were, we had considered the lights for Stillwell, and we had also considered the walking path for the community. I think that's another very important thing, that the community gets to use the assets that they paid for. The track is safe, it's level, it's good for all ages to come and walk on. I also, with the busing situation, there's also the gender equity piece of it, because the boys get to play on the turf field, but the girls don't get to play on the turf field because there's not enough time. And honestly, that's not fair. My questions, Dr. Rogers, and I'm sure you do a very thorough job, is can you please go through the funding with the reserves? Can you please speak about the light pollution from the lights? And that's it. Obviously, I'm for this.
Thanks to the members of the board for sharing your thoughts. I'll try to summarize and answer some of your questions. So maybe some nuts and bolts first. How would something like this get paid for? What would it cost? As Ms. Frankel mentioned, we, as part of the turf installation project, we ran under the turf field conduit. These are tubes that you would later pull electrical wire through because it would be enormously disruptive to try and rip up the turf field surface to lay down conduit. So we put that in advance in order to preserve the option, should the board choose to pursue it at some point in the future, to be able to do lighting without disturbing the existing turf field surface. That puts us in a position now, as the board is considering whether and how to do that. The construction of the lights, our estimate is in the neighborhood of $650,000 or so, and that would be for the construction of 4 light towers. These towers would be approximately 80 feet high, and the the lights, the current lights, trying to decide what order to do this in order to make it easy to follow. The current light technology is using LED lights. The advantages, they have two pretty significant advantages. The first is they use less energy than the incandescent lights or the halogen lights that they replace. And they also have the ability to be much more focused than those incandescent lights. So we call that scatter, and the lighting technology has much reduced scatter. So if you see pictures of fields that are using this technology, you see a dramatic drop-off in light right beyond the edge of the track. So there's a little bit of illumination in the stands if there is, but not a lot of illumination beyond that, and that's because the lighting technology allows it to be much more focused than some of the lighting technologies in the past. That said, what would it take to construct such a project? So this building project would require State Education Department approval because it will require a building permit. Schools are different from other entities in that our building permits come not from local municipalities, but from Albany, from the State Education Department. The State Education Department does not issue a building permit to a school district for anything that requires a building permit without having it go through either an architectural or engineering review, depending on what type of project it is. The state has had difficulty, their own version of a bus driver shortage, they have an engineering shortage. So projects that require engineering review have often had in the neighborhood of 40 weeks of lead time in order to get State Education Department approval. It's my understanding that this project would not have quite such a long lead time for State Education Department approval, and I'd hate to throw out a really ambitious number and then have the state not hit it, but we're talking in the neighborhood of maybe more like a dozen weeks or 10 weeks rather than 40 weeks or something like that. So that's encouraging. Once the State Education Department gives us an approval, and if we have a funding source, I'll come back to the funding source, then what we would do at the district level is we would take that project, the specifications that are approved by the state, designed by architects, and we would then do a public bid. And it'll take some time for that bid to remain open and on the market so that multiple bidders have a chance to bid on it. They will download what's called a bid package. They will look through the specs. They will decide how much they think it will cost them to build it. And ultimately, all the bidders turn in their bids simultaneously. The district opens the bids simultaneously. And obviously, we're looking for best value among those bids. So that process also takes a couple of weeks so that the bidders have ample opportunity to review the project. Then once a bidder is selected, then we go through a process of finalizing a contract that often takes a couple of weeks because it's not just signing a contract, but we have to ensure that they have bonds and insurances. So, and this is true of all of these construction projects that we've been doing. Every contractor has to have performance bonds. In other words, we get paid if they don't finish the job. They have to have insurances that protect their workers, protect the school district. If they break something, the insurance has to pay for it. They have to be adequately insured in case someone gets hurt. Obviously, there can be huge settlements when there's a personal injury. So we need to make sure that their insurance is adequate, that it's with a company that we believe is not us, it's actually our insurance carrier, verifies that their company is adequately insured and adequately reserved. We don't want them to have a flimsy company behind them. All of that takes a surprising amount of time and energy. Once all of that is settled, they will, and we've awarded the contract, you have awarded the contract at the board meeting, then they will immediately start ordering materials. And it's my understanding that this type of lighting technology has about an 8 to 12 week lead time. So hopefully lead times will improve over the course of the year, but I think we're all hearing about difficulties in getting cars, difficulties in getting computers because of the lead times and the number of container ships that are not able to be offloaded. This also ends up fitting into that category of long lead time items as well. And then ultimately, there's time needed to construct the project, and that looks like it's probably in the 8-week time frame as well. So all of that said, there's a lot that leads up to actually getting it done in terms of all of these processes that have to be followed. I think an ambitious time frame might be to think about having a project like this done about this time next year. That would require a lot of things to go right, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. Where would the funding come from? School districts, the funding has to be approved by the voters no matter what. It's just a question of which mechanism it goes through. So the district has a capital reserve, and the funds in the capital reserve may be used for capital projects. And we have certainly taken advantage of that funding mechanism for a lot of the projects that we have done in phase 1 and phase 2. And by using the monies that are in the capital reserve, we avoid taking on new debt and then incurring interest costs. So it's always wise to use the capital reserve because you don't waste money on interest if it's unnecessary. So money exists in the capital reserve. There has to be a separate vote of the public in order to take money out of the capital reserve. So you can either do that as part of your budget vote in May, or you can set another date at a different time in the year. But either way, you have to have a vote of the public to take money out of the capital reserve. Another way to fund capital projects is to include them in the school district's budget, which will be voted on in May. And what we have done over the course of the last several years, particularly with our roofing projects, we have included those roofing projects as part of the budget. The budget is approved by voters. The roofing projects get done as a matter of course as part of the ordinary implementation of the school district's budget. So that goes through the funding sources, the different mechanisms, my sense of the timeline, my sense of the cost. Brian's question about are there any other disadvantages? In the past, I would say that the scatter of the light was a disadvantage. I think that's been greatly reduced, not obviously reduced to zero, but greatly reduced. Mr. Rotolo's comment on gender equity, I believe that the athletics department has worked very hard to try and make sure that there is equal access to the field for boys and girls versions of the sports. But because it's getting dark early, you can only have one sport use the field on any given night. If you had lights, you would be able to have boys early and girls late, or vice versa on the same night. So that is an option that would be improved through the use of lighting. And I do think that I addressed your question about funding with reserves and light pollution, and I'm just going through security. So there is no question that night events are harder to manage from a security perspective. There's no getting around that. More misbehavior happens at night. A security guard can see 150 yards in broad daylight. It might be able to see 30, 40 feet at night. So you need to have a much larger security presence in order to cover the same amount of territory. You'd want to have more people in the parking lots. Typically, a lot of the misbehavior happens in parking lots at evening events. It's not impossible to manage these things, though, and obviously lots of school districts do it. But there is a presence that is needed. That presence needs to be, you need to be a little bit thicker with security when you're running evening events. And obviously you need to be even more vigilant about, let's call it red Solo Cup problems in order to prevent things from going sideways. So, but those are all things that can be managed. How would we manage community use of facilities after dark? I'd want to talk with some other school districts that I'd want to talk to the neighbors and find out how they manage it before making any final determinations. But I certainly agree with the point that if there's a way that we can make this an asset to the community, by all means, let's do so, and let's figure out how to do it safely. So I do think that we would want to have a security presence. We do have kids that use the field during the day and on the weekends. They just do pickup games of flag football or touch football, I guess. And there's a way that that can be done at night in the same way. We just have to make sure that we have enough security there to keep it safe and to make sure that we know who's there on the property. And so, that I'd want to come back to you with a security plan, but I do think that this is something that we can manage. I'm sorry. I did address that. Yeah. So I'm going to turn to Dr. Rufo because I'll pick a number out of the recesses of my memory, and I'd rather have your memory be wrong than my memory be wrong.
I think the 40,000, I'm not sure if the 40,000 number that was referenced was pre the new voting machines. So I think it was a bit less than that, but I'd really have to check in terms of the amount of the additional vote.
But I will address the question on timeline. Obviously, with tight timelines, the more time we have, the better chance we are of being able to deliver before it gets late enough in the year that the darkness is becoming an issue for us. So with any of these construction problems, I will always welcome more time, but I don't think that it would be impossible to do from May.
Okay, sorry about that. Good? Okay. And the other reason is because we allow the community to hear what we have to say, and then we make a motion at another time. So my plan is to make a motion to commence this project at the earliest meeting that we have, and whether that's in November or we have a meeting before that, that's when I'm going to be making a motion. Lisa?
I just have a quick question because I'm not sure if I understand. If a community vote is necessary, it's not going to matter whether or not the community vote is done before the May vote? Will that not affect the timeline of events of how quickly we would be able to get this project done? Did I understand that correctly? It won't matter?
If you got that it won't matter, then I didn't phrase it clearly enough. If it is approved in May, then it will be a challenge to get it done by this time next year. Not impossible, looking closely at the time frame, but a challenge. If it is approved by the public earlier, we'll get started sooner, and obviously that just puts more time into the timeline, makes it easier for us to manage the project and get it done sooner. So it is, I guess in large part a question of whether the cost of running an earlier vote or rather, the cost of running the earlier vote buys you a little bit more of a guarantee that you would have the lights in place for the fall season next year.
Dr. Park?
Does it make sense at this time to also consider lights over the tennis courts? Would it save district money if we do all that project together?
I don't know that we would necessarily save money. I'm guessing that those two projects would probably have to be bid separately. They would be different building projects from the state education department's perspective. So we would probably bid them individually. So for example, with the ventilation projects that we did in the secondary schools, even though they're all the same direct outdoor air system, we have 3 different vendors in 3 different schools. So I don't know that we would get like a volume discount or something by doing both sets of lights at the same time. It might go through the approval process a little more quickly if we were specifying the same lighting package in both places, but I actually don't think that the lighting over the tennis courts would be the same, because I don't think you need 80-foot towers there. The requirements for football end up kind of dictating that, because the ball can go so high in the air, and hopefully the tennis ball isn't going that high in the air if it's being played properly. So I don't know that there would be any necessary advantage to doing that.
Lisa?
Is there anything that we can do, let's say temporarily, that would, some type of temporary lighting that would allow for students who are playing the sports throughout the 21-22 school year to be able to utilize the turf for night games?
So we have been using portable diesel-powered light towers at the field, and I would say that they are not ideal, but they are better than nothing. And what they have done is they have taken the games, Ms. Frankel was describing the dusk games, and making the dusk games a little bit more playable. But I think if it was pitch dark outside, we would not say that those lights were adequate to make the field a comfortable place to play soccer.
Okay, that concludes discussion items. There's no unfinished business. Now for new business. A1 is the approval of staff changes. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Rotolo, seconded by Ms. Levitan. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? A2 is the approval of 2021-22 stipends and hourly rate activities. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Koshia, seconded by Ms. Cheng. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? A3 is the appointment of extracurricular assignments. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Falco, seconded by Mr. Greco. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? A4 is the approval of coaching recommendations for 2021-22. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Koshia, seconded by Ms. Chang. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? B1 is the approval of Committee of Special Education recommendations. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Greco, seconded by Ms. Levitan. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? B2 is the approval of Committee on Preschool Special Education recommendations. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Koshia, seconded by Rob Gershon. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? B3 is the authorization for contracts for federal Part B funds. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Rotolo, seconded by Mr. Greco. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? B4 is the approval of student club charters. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Koshia, seconded by Dr. Park. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? B5 is the approval of the appointment of an internal auditing firm for 21-22. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Rotolo, seconded by Ms. Falco. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C1 is the authorization for service contracts. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Koshia, seconded by Ms. Chang. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C2 is the authorization for special education and nursing contracts. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Levitan, seconded by Mr. Greco. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C4 is the Did I do C4? C3 is the authorization for acceptance of audit report and corrective action plans. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Koshia, seconded by Ms. Chang. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C4 is the authorization for a memorandum of agreement with Nassau BOCES regarding renting buses. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Greco, seconded by Mr. Rotolo. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? C5 is the acceptance of the donation of 30 bags of mulch. May I have a motion, please? Ms. Koshia, seconded by Dr. Park. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? And lastly, C6 is the authorization of the disposal of broken surplus and or obsolete equipment in our books. May I have a motion, please? Mr. Greco, seconded by Ms. Falkov. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion to adjourn. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.